Consider your social existence not as a web of emotional connections, but as a geopolitical alliance. You are an independent state surrounded by other sovereign entities, loosely bound by a mutual defense treaty against loneliness and boredom. To maintain good standing in this alliance, you are required to contribute a percentage of your gross domestic product toward joint exercises and collective security operations. On the surface, this seems like a fair trade for stability and belonging. But if you audit the books, you will discover that you are a developing nation being forced to match the military spending of a superpower. You are funding a first-world defense budget on a third-world economy, and the alliance protocols are designed to obscure this imbalance until you face a liquidity crisis. This is not friendship. This is systemic financial extraction operating under the diplomatic cover of camaraderie. At Diabolical Invests, we analyze systems based on incentives and outcomes, ignoring the stated intentions of the participants. When viewed through this cold lens, the modern peer group functions less like a support network and more like a decentralized taxing authority. It levies tariffs on your time and imposes excise taxes on your milestones. The most insidious aspect of this system is that the tax rate is set by the most fiscally irresponsible member of the coalition. When the group dynamic dictates that an acceptable Friday night involves a $50 cover charge and $18 craft cocktails, that sets the baseline requirement for participation. It does not matter if your budget aligns with a six-pack on a porch. The market price for social inclusion has been artificially inflated by a dominant minority who confuse spending with living. You are forced to subsidize their performance of affluence to avoid the diplomatic penalty of being labeled an isolationist. To understand why rational actors submit to this irrational taxation, we must pivot to evolutionary biology and signaling theory. In nature, certain species develop burdensome, expensive traits, like the peacock's tail or the stag's massive antlers. These serve no practical survival purpose and actually hinder mobility. These are honest signals of genetic fitness. They demonstrate to potential mates and rivals that the organism is so robust it can afford to waste resources on useless ornamentation and still thrive. Your social circle operates on the same primitive logic. Buying the third round of drinks for 8 people when you only want one, or agreeing to the premium package at the sporting event, is an economic peacock tail. It is a public demonstration that you have surplus resources to burn. The danger lies in the fact that this signaling game is inherently inflationary. Once the entire group has adopted a certain level of wasteful spending as the baseline for fitness, someone must escalate the signal to stand out. The casual weekend trip becomes a cross-continental flight. The backyard barbecue transforms into a catered affair. The signal requirement constantly creeps upward, forcing every member to increase their resource burn just to maintain their current standing. You're trapped in a Red Queen's race, running faster and faster financially just to stay in the same social place. The system is designed to weaponize your fear of falling behind, convincing you that fiscal responsibility is actually a symptom of social weakness. Let us examine a different vector of this extraction, the milestone industrial complex. Modern society has contrived an endless series of mandatory celebrations, each requiring a significant capital injection from the attendees. We are no longer talking about a simple birthday card. We are analyzing a sector of the experience economy that has successfully monetized human connection into a series of high-ticket obligations. The milestone framework has expanded aggressively. It is no longer just the wedding. It is the engagement party, the multi-day destination pre-wedding ritual for both parties, the bridal shower, and then the main event itself, often requiring travel and specialized attire. That will become a depreciating asset in your closet immediately after use. Analyze this as a corporate merger. If a company proposed an acquisition that required 5 separate, expensive due diligence trips, mandatory capital contributions to the target company's founders, and a forced purchase of their existing inventory at a markup, shareholders would revolt. Yet in the social realm, we accept this terrible deal repeatedly. We do it because the perpetrators are not faceless corporations, but people we genuinely harbor affection for. This emotional leverage is the mechanism that bypasses your rational financial defenses. You're undergoing a shakedown by people you love, which makes it nearly impossible to identify as extortion. The financial damage is rarely the result of a single catastrophic event. It is death by 1,000 invoices. It is the cumulative effect of high-frequency, low-friction transactions. It's the Uber rides between venues you didn't want to visit, the delivery apps ordered because the group couldn't decide on cooking, the obligatory contributions to group gifts for acquaintances you barely tolerate. These are the operational costs of maintaining the alliance. When you aggregate these costs over a decade, the capital drain is staggering. You're looking at the down payment on a property or fully funded retirement accounts, vaporized into a cloud of mediocre memories and hangovers. Furthermore, the system is rigged to penalize thrift. The architecture of modern socializing is built around consumption portals. You cannot simply exist together in a public space. You must be processing a transaction. Try suggesting a zero-cost activity to a group accustomed to high-consumption signaling. You will be met with confused silence or polite deflection. The group organism rejects the non-consumer input because it threatens the established protocol of value exchange. Your refusal to spend is interpreted not as a financial decision, but as a withdrawal of affection. The system successfully conflates net worth with self-worth and purchasing power with emotional commitment. There is also a psychological phenomenon at play resembling the sunk cost fallacy in investment banking. You have already poured so much time, energy, and money into these relationships that walking away feels like writing off a massive loss. You continue to throw good money after bad because the admission that the investment has turned toxic is too painful to bear. The social environment itself is engineered to cloud your judgment. The combination of alcohol, late hours, and the psychological pressure of group conformity creates a fog of war, where rational accounting becomes impossible. You're making financial decisions while impaired by dopamine and social anxiety. The irony, of course, is that the people driving this consumption cycle are often the most levered. They're financing their signaling behavior through revolving credit, living a breathless existence paycheck to paycheck, terrified that if the music stops, their entire social identity will collapse. By participating in their expensive charade, you are not helping them. You are enabling their financial delusion. You act as the audience for their performance of wealth, providing the validation they require to keep digging their own debt graves. If you wish to escape this cycle of wealth erosion, you must adopt the mindset of a distressed asset manager taking over a failing portfolio. The first step is a ruthless audit. You must categorize your social connections not by history or sentiment, but by their financial toxicity. Identify the high-yield bonds in your life, the people whose company requires enormous capital outlays and high-risk activities. Identify the parasitic loads, the connections that operate purely on a one-way extraction basis, always requiring you to travel, to pay, to accommodate. Once the audit is complete, you must execute a divestment strategy. This is where most people fail because they attempt negotiation. They try to convince the group to change its behavior. This is futile. You cannot convince an inflationary system to voluntarily deflate. You cannot convince a peacock that its tail is inefficient. You must unilaterally alter your terms of engagement. This does not mean becoming a hermit. It means establishing hard boundaries around your capital allocation and defending them with the same cold detachment of a central bank setting interest rates. When a high-cost demand is placed upon you, a destination event, a mandatory contribution, you do not offer excuses. You do not plead poverty. You simply state that the expenditure does not fit your current capital allocation strategy. You decline the invitation to the opulent dinner and offer a counterproposal for a coffee connection at a later date. You decline the cross-country flight for the minor milestone and send a thoughtful, low-cost handwritten note instead. You must become comfortable with being perceived as austere, perhaps even slightly cold. This new protocol will act as a filtration system.